Hello and welcome to Circle Time, the Early Years podcast with me, Glenn Denny. I'm delighted to have on this edition of the podcast the author, mentor, trainer and winner of the Nursery World Early Years Trainer of the Year 2021 award, the wonderful Alison Featherbe. Alison, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's lovely to be here and thank you so much for inviting me.
You are more than welcome. It's brilliant to have you here. Now, we were kind of talking like all sorts of things early years, and particularly just before we started recording, we were talking about how, you know, the role of the adult is really, really important. What does that mean to you?
It is really important. And obviously that starts right from recruitment and how we identify that an X factor, really. I'm very well aware of safe recruitment and all of that, but we really do need the best person possible to work with our children.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, we can unlock that. Some people have that already.
Mm-hmm.
And some people need to be mentored and coached within that. But most importantly is that I believe is that everyone really must be the best that they can be and a great role model for children through their play, through their interactions, and through providing a safe and nurturing, exhilarating environment so that children can experience lots of challenge and really unlock themselves.
Definitely. I mean, there's that thing as well, like you were talking about the best person for the role as well. I mean, I've certainly seen in terms of my own setting as well, we have what we call like practitioners and we have play workers. So practitioners are qualified and play workers are unqualified. But I've definitely seen that, I mean, there's that mix, and it's kind of possibly a debate for another day, but there's that mix where actually you get some practitioners, yes, they've got the bit of paper that says they can do the job, but can they? And then you get some play workers, and I met some beautiful, amazing play workers who, I mean, there was one that came for a tour round after their interview, and myself and a colleague both turned around and went, they must be qualified. They must be. She wasn't. So she came for a play worker job. She is brilliant. She is what the sector should be about, but yet not qualified. But so, I mean, like I say, qualification is a debate for another day, but it's about wanting to be there. It's about wanting to do the best for the child.
Absolutely. And that's so interesting and something that I'm certainly seeing as well. I'm an old NNEB, and some of your listeners may remember that Nursery Nursing Education Board, so an NNEB. But in many recent years, we haven't really had a really clearly defined name for what we do. We've got early years educator, we've got practitioner, we've got early years teacher, we've got early years professional, and it's down to every provider to sort of capture that. That sometimes some people get introduced, here's my level 3 or here's my level 2, and I feel a bit sorry for them and what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Because it means something different to everybody. I know that through looking at, you know, recent level 2 and level 3 qualifications, there's an awful lot that's involved with that. But it's really down to where people are working that really unlocks themselves. It's that team around that person that allows them to be the best that they can be. Because I absolutely know if you're, you know, not within a team that's safe and nurturing and, you know, it's got a culture where, you know, maybe they're all the similar age or they're all the similar sex. I really do think diversity and a range in ages really does bring a different culture to a team. So yes, absolutely right. Whether you're unqualified or qualified, it's not really about that for me. It's about whether you've got that that particular personality, that particular want to really want the child to learn and to do the best. And it's about that connection. And that isn't in level 2, level 3. That's, you know, that's not a ticker box thing. That that's heaven sent for me. And it's part of the spirit that we have and part of our why we're here and why we do the job that we do. Because let's face it, we're not paid an awful lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we choose to do a job because we're really interested in it. We really want to learn more, and we really, really love playing and learning from that play. Because we also learn from children, which is an important thing to say too.
Oh, we do. Yeah. I mean, that is really like, as soon as you said that, my face kind of lit up a little bit because we do. I mean, I've learned more from the children. I think it's bits as well that you when you're playing alongside the children and playing with them, that you notice things that you like you didn't know, or you maybe didn't know how to handle a situation with a child. And you think, right, okay, I need to learn a bit more about that. So it's kind of a prompt for your own learning and development as well, isn't it?
Definitely. And I've learned from honestly every child. Some people talk about challenging children, but they're a challenge to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that challenge can manifest itself in lots of different ways. I do definitely think that being reflective at the end of the day helps, and
Mm-hmm.
thinking about those situations and thinking, could I have done something differently? And trying to think about though all those perspectives. What was that situation like for the child? What could have potentially been going on? What were they thinking? What were they feeling? To so that and what were those actions? And we definitely need to get into children and think how they're thinking,
Mm-hmm.
because if we do that, we can sort of anticipate those feelings and talk to them about those feelings, and very often then we're able to either calm children down or explain what's going on, because emotions and feelings are really heightened, especially as you're growing and developing.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be that then we can reduce some of those actions that we maybe find maybe not acceptable.
Definitely. I mean, there's certain things. So I work with toddlers a lot. So I work with the 2-year-olds. I adore that age group. I really do. It's a bit too much. Some people find it too much of a challenge because they are just these bundle of mixed emotions that are just ready to explode at any moment. But I see that as a wonderful opportunity to learn from them, and also to challenge myself and my thinking and behaviors and that, and like, how can I support this child? I mean, certainly in terms of emotions and things like that, I found a really good technique, it was actually a storybook called The Color Monster, and I used that as part of one of my uni essays that I had to do, one of my units, and how we use that to support emotions. And in fact, the setting that I did that in is still using it now. So it's kind of something I've learned that I passed on, and that is still being used, and it's being passed on to other practitioners who are now in the setting as well. And it's wonderful that we can share that kind of information and that experience with each other. And it's kind of going back to what you first saying, that if you find a good person to be part of your team, and you've got a good team that can then nurture that person, just so much wonderful work can then happen.
Absolutely. And what we really and truly want is we want spirit, and we
Mhm.
want individuality, and we want to allow children to develop and to experience all of those things, so that they can that helps with their resilience, that helps with them knowing themselves. We don't want to suppress anything really, because
Mhm.
children need to experience all of those wide range of emotions and feelings, and we need to help them with that, and sit with them through those things. I think very often we're very quick to say, no, that's not acceptable, don't do that, don't do that. And very sadly, what happens is that when children get older, they do have a poor sense of self, and it's no
Mhm.
wonder that anxiety creeps in, etc. So, especially toddlers, that's your time when all of those things are racing around.
Mhm.
And we need to absolutely know and understand that, so that we can understand and support behavior. I'm not a big fan of managing behavior in that term.
Mhm. I know, certainly for one thing, I mean, like I say, toddlers do have a tendency to have those moments where their just emotions explode, and they do have, you know, the terrible two tantrums, which, you know, is that horrible label that they get stuck with. But they do have lots to, and I find myself now, having, you know, worked with them for so long, I just step back and it's like, right, I'm going to let you have this because you need to have that moment where your emotions explode and everything else. And once you calm, then let's have a cuddle and we'll talk about it and we'll see if we can piece it all together and help you to understand what's happened. But I can't help them whilst they're having that moment because they need to have that moment.
Yeah, I think, and as well, it's my experience that the longer the children stay in that moment, it's because all of their problems have been solved, or they've been scooped up and said, no, don't worry, you can have what you want, or you can let's go and do what you want, or let's give you something to eat and you'll maybe feel better. And that's just suggests to me that children will just stay in that stage for longer and longer because they haven't been able to manage themselves out of it.
Yeah.
But they do if you know, if left and quietly spoken to and said, I'm here when you're ready. And I certainly find that children come out that much quicker. And of course, that's what we want. We want them to learn about their own emotions and learn how to come out of things, because they do sweep them away really, really quickly. And I just think a supportive and understanding person there to guide them through it is really, really the way forward. And that they're all, you see, teachable moments, which is something I'm a big fan of. Those moments are there so that we all learn from them. They're not that then, you know, and that's very much part of growing and developing.
It is. I mean, like you say, I mean, sometimes you don't stop and think about it, but yes, actually allowing the child to have that moment where their emotions are running high is actually a teachable moment. It's one of these things you kind of stop and think about. It's like, actually, they are learning something here, and I'm helping them to, like, I'm helping to teach them that as well, that it's okay to have that moment to process it.
Yes, I definitely am a big fan of slowing down. So, you know, we do things at 90 miles an hour, and we have done for many, many years now. Now we tick a box, children do this, we make them do that. We say that, you know, this is what you're going to play with, then we're going to tidy it up, and then you're going to have a drink, and then you're going to do this, then you're going to do that. And that, you know, that sounds amazing, but I do think we do things too quickly. So I'm a big fan of slowing things down, and you know, and we can do that with our voice, we can do that with our body, but we really set the tone of the room and set the tone of that emotional environment, and that means that we not only have to be trusted sources because we're our setting's biggest and best resource, but we also have to be consistent. So, you know, not turning into all singing, all dancing practitioner when it suits and when you feel like it. It's about you as a practitioner having a level of interaction, of engagement, of teaching that's consistent throughout of the day. Because I think it sends a really difficult message to children when we're 90 miles an hour for 1 minute, and then in some parts of the day, you know, we're doing other stuff, and we're not there for them, we're not respectful. So for me, it's about that consistency and everybody finding their natural level of teaching, of interacting, and stick with that for the whole of the day. We work really long hours, so it's absolutely impossible to be on fire all of the time and all singing or dancing practitioner, as I like to say. So it's just not possible to do that throughout the day. So I definitely suggest find your level of norm and be consistent at it, because that's what children need. We don't want to send messages that throughout the day we have peaks and troughs, because what are we telling children? That when you're an adult, you can have peaks and troughs as well.
Definitely. I mean, kind of taking a step back as well, we were talking about teachable moments there, and I think that is a phrase that actually gets misunderstood, you know, quite a bit as well, that it's almost like you have to sit down with a child and we are going to learn this now, but it's not. It's lots of moments through the day that we can alongside the child, scaffold what,
Yeah.
their understanding, and help them to understand in their own way.
Yeah, it's absolutely recognizing that throughout the day, they can't be planned for teachable moments, but the day sends itself some amazing things. It could be a plane flying over, it could be a car bibbing outside, it could be a bird flying into the garden, it could be absolutely anything that isn't on the planning, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we have to really look for those moments and help children to look for them too, and to really appreciate their environment and literally be in the moment with themselves and with their environment, because that's where we know that language and that rich environment is absolutely more meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Because they're engaged, they're interested.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to be. We need to be there at that moment. I mean, one example I've had recently was we were doing some tidying up in the room. We were just putting some things back, and all of a sudden this spider just crawled across the table. And we just stopped, and just all of us, all the children just gathered around, and we were watching this spider crawling along. Now, bear in mind, I hate spiders, but to be brave, I was there. I sat beside the children, and we were watching this thing, and I was just hoping it wasn't coming too close to me. But it was just the look of intentness on their face, like just staring at this spider. And I was kind of introducing words like creeping and crawling, and look at his long legs, and it's going to move up, lots of language going on there. And it was wonderful. But it was, again, like you say, it wasn't planned for. I can't plan for a spider unless I happen to bring one in. I can't plan for that spider crawling across the table, and I certainly wouldn't bring one in. But but it's just wonderful that we can take those moments. And I think, again, it's down to your skill and how you feel as a practitioner, and your confidence as well. And again, it's that nurturing environment as well that builds your confidence to do that.
It is, and those moments, they'll bring their own learning outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
and ones you absolutely didn't plan for. But yes, and it I think what children like as well is our awe and wonder, our face of awe and wonder when something like that happens, because they can pick up on that. And it's literally about seizing that moment and about thinking, okay, what can we find? Can we find out anything more? Is there any more
Mm-hmm.
spiders? I mean, the possibilities from that one thing alone that could happen to anybody at any time of the day, the possibilities are endless. And a skilled practitioner, whether you're qualified or unqualified, will be able to link all of those things to all 7 areas of learning.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, there was one setting I was at where I was deputy manager, and I was going through some of the observations. Now, this particular company wanted you to tick what you were doing on the EY. That drives me bananas. But anyway, that's another story. Again, it just felt like tick box, but it was all planned activity. But I was looking at stuff going, yes, but what about this? But I didn't plan for that. No, but it happened, didn't it? I'd watched the activity happen, and I'd looked at the observation that they'd written up for the child, and there were so many bits that were being missing, were missing because they were so intent on that planned activity that they missed out what else was going on, because they were focused on that one thing. They were very much blinkered to what they had planned, and everything else, it didn't exist. And I think that's where having that unplanned for teachable moment is key and crucial to a child's development and learning.
It is, and we need to celebrate that much more. I mean, we've naturally we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. We've come on a long journey, and there's been lots of social things that have gone on, and lots of
Mm-hmm.
Ofsted requirements, and we've had the online journals come, and I do think that has changed the way that we practice.
Mm-hmm.
When online journals first came, we were very excited. This was going to solve all of our problems. We could just tick where a child is at and just look at those lovely forms and those lovely charts. It would be amazing to know exactly where every child is at. But after a period of time, we really recognized that was getting overwhelming and actually taking us away from interacting with children, because we became obsessed with the large amounts of information that we wanted to put on there. they're absolutely, they're amazing things,
Hmm.
online journals, and it, obviously one of the most important things is the information that we can share very quickly with
Yeah.
parents.
Hmm.
But I do think it has also de-skilled us, where we haven't had to think about those individual steps. And child development is an amazing thing, but
Hmm.
really and truly, I know we always talk about unique children, and every child really does develop in different ways. And I've got twin boys, and they're identical, and they are so different.
Hmm.
Every single child that we come across is absolutely really individual. They've had different knowledge and experiences as well. But there's also so much learning out there. We couldn't possibly do it all, and
Hmm.
neither should we. It's out there to think about in the future. But if we capture those great moments, there's always learning in those teachable moments.
Well, that's definitely something we do. Like, I mean, the online journals, like you say, it was meant to be that thing that it was going to make life easier. Actually, in some cases, it's made it more difficult because we feel like we have to sit there constantly on a tablet and do something. Whereas the way I've done it in one setting was we just take a photo. That's all we need is a photo, and then later on, when we've got time, and usually it's when they're having their nap, that's the time when we can just busy ourselves because we don't need to do anything else. They're all sleeping. We're keeping an eye on them and they're comfortable and safe. And we can sit down and put all these on. And we put a little description. We don't tick the UIFS. We just don't do that. But we do put on a description to the parents of what the child has learned from this, and so the parents then get that better. It's almost like a partnership with us. They understand what we're doing when we're doing something ridiculous with shaving foam or whatever, then they understand that actually, yes, it's messy, but actually this is what the child is learning, and they're building muscles for writing, or, they're feeling the texture and they're talking about the texture. And there's all that learning that's come from that. But,
Yeah.
it's.
Photos are amazing, and obviously we've all got devices now where these photos come into our lives all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I'm talking to my clients and through my trainings about is those photos are hugely valuable. First of all, you've got to make sure that obviously they're not online, and
Mm-hmm.
they're not out there for everybody to look at from a safeguarding point of view. So they get sent to the parent, and I definitely think that we could use them in a much better way. Firstly, I think we need to use them to communicate our value. So putting the role of the adult within that moment, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's going to be a really rich moment because it's going to capture something that's happening or going on. So it's going to be a rich moment that you're capturing, but putting the role of the adult within that moment is really good, and that does two things. That communicates your value as a practitioner, what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing within that play, and your role within it. And you could say something like, I know I set this up because so and so was interested in filling and pouring yesterday, for example, and look what they've been able to do today, because I've really then you're saying I've thought about what your child is interested in, and I've provided them something to reinforce that, because obviously we know that children like repetition and
Mm-hmm.
like to play with things that they're interested in. And the second thing that I think it's really valuable for is to say, talk to your child about. So if you put something like talk to your child about filling and pouring when they have a bath, it plants a seed in the parent's mind. That's a great idea. I can see what you've done there and your role
Mm-hmm.
within that. And now you've given me some ideas of things that I could talk to my child about later on, because we absolutely know that children need to have those things said in lots of different ways, so that they lay down all of those brain connections.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously filling and pouring is those prerequisites for understanding the world, but also maths, and also rich language, and also there's fine motor in there, there's probably gross motor if you're
Mm-hmm.
filling and pouring great big buckets. um, and if you explain to parents that your curriculum and the 7 areas of learning, and just communicate those wonderful pictures that we've all got the capacity to do now, and just be very careful about how you communicate your value, and because that's obviously at home learning as well. So
Mhm.
a two-pronged approach to that.
It definitely builds that partnership between the setting and the parent as well.
Yes,
And I think as
it's
well,
so important.
definitely, because I know one of the other things we kind of mentioned uh, just before we started recording was about play partners as well. And that's kind of term that's starting to emerge more and more, isn't it, about partners in play? And I think it is important that we're not there to run whatever the child is playing with. We're there to play alongside them, particularly if they want us to. And I think that's kind of a key part, isn't it, if they want us to.
Absolutely, and there isn't any hard and fast rules about all of that. But what we have to remember how we played first of all, and
Hmm.
hopefully we had rich play opportunities, and we probably did if we work in early years. To be honest,
Hmm.
everybody I know, I do that as a little activity for my training. Everybody has had rich play
Yeah.
experiences. And I think that that's really important. Children are definitely playing in different ways.
Hmm.
At home, I was a child that was often open the front door and I was gone. Children aren't playing like that anymore. Children have tablets, and they're not maybe not making so much mess indoors. I mean, I used to turn over my settee and it would be a den for at least a week.
Hmm.
um, and all my toys would be in there, and I can't imagine many parents doing that now because we've all got very different and busy lives.
Hmm.
So I do think that we have to some extent, model play and try and get some obviously imaginative play,
Hmm.
um, and something that I really like to see an awful lot, which is role play. And role play is obviously around a narrative. It's around what children have seen in their environment, because they're looking at those things. It may be hopefully going shopping, and hopefully I don't know, going to markets, going to visit things, visits to the doctors or the hospital, or all sorts of places.
Hmm.
But it's very important that children play out a narrative. We also know that, I take the example of going shopping. Some children may have just experienced shopping plopping on the doorstep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Particularly in the last couple of years as well. Yeah.
exactly, that may be their idea of where potatoes come from.
Hmm.
And if we were to really expand on that and provide our knowledge and experience through a play, a setup play, it may be that we could bring that into that role play and have something for children to really think about. And obviously, we enforce that with great stories and great books,
Hmm.
um, and rhyme and songs and all sorts of things as well. But I think using our imagination and being creative, is really, really important.
I think so. I think as well, like you were talking about our kind of past experiences as children and like making dens and things like that. I think that's the opportunity for us to bring that in. Like it's almost like we have to bring it back. It should never have gone away in the first place, but it's almost like we have to bring it back. Like, I mean, I love making dens with our children. They adore it. Like we have a sofa in our room and we will make a den out of that, or we'll use one of the chairs and we'll put blankets around. And I think children should have that magic, that awe and that
Yeah.
kind of experience of expanding on what they know. I mean, some children I know in my room have there was quite a few of them at one point were going out on visits to steam trains and things nearby. So that became a thing. So our train track was out constantly. And every morning I had to build a new train track for the children so that they could pull the trains around. But I did that because it's expanding on what they know and what they wanted to do. And, that role play and that imagination as well.
Yes, I definitely think we need to give children a bit more control over their own play too.
Mhm.
We we do have things like Pinterest, and although
Mm.
that's very nice and very exciting to scroll our way through and see all these lovely tough spots presented, and by jolly. They do look really nice. I take my hat off to anybody that can make a farm out of a packet of Weetabix and plastic animals and Rice Krispies and things like that. And it does look really impressive.
Mm.
But actually, what is that telling a child if a child comes into that and looks at that beautifully presented tough spot tray? It's just telling a child how really clever we are.
Hmm.
We've been able to put this together for you, and now you don't have to worry about a thing. You don't have to worry about making sure the Weetabix are all in a line because I've sorted that all out for you. You don't have to worry about finding the cows because they're all there lined up in a row for you. You don't have to worry about making sure the trees are all in one place because I've solved that problem for you.
Hmm.
And so I really believe that those tough spots solve children's problems, but it's our problems and our challenges that we children need.
Yes.
They need to know that they're in control of that play because they will learn far more about lining things up, measuring things out,
Hmm.
the wetness of the sand that's there, the dryness of the sand, and they'll learn far more if they put together their own play and are in charge of it. We need to give children autonomy back. We've taken it
Definitely.
away.
I know what you mean. I mean, when you said the dreaded P word, Pinterest, I cringed like you wouldn't believe because I mean, I'll be honest, somewhere around in the World Wide Web, I do have a Pinterest account. Couldn't tell you my username or password because I haven't used it in donkey's years because I took one scroll through it and went, nah, forget that. I mean, for me, things like tough trays and that, I mean, they have value, but if I spend more than 1 minute setting up a tough tray, then I will abandon it because it's all about me. It's not about them. Like recently I put half oranges, like cut up oranges on there and some squeezes and things. And then I stood back. There you go. That's my work done. What are you going to do with it, guys? And that was it. That was their problem to do, their decisions to make. What were they going to do? And they loved it. They were kind of peeling them and squashing them and squeezing them. They could smell them. They could taste the juice, all that there. And I literally spent 30 seconds throwing stuff on a tough tray. That was it.
Yeah, I definitely think deconstructing sort of areas like that. So even, I mean, lovely activity, but even thinking, okay, what about if I was just to put a bag of oranges or a basket of oranges
Hmm.
and then decide what they're going to? You could maybe suggest, should we cut them up and find out what's inside?
Hmm.
And that is obviously rich language, obviously a teachable moment. They may say, no, actually, we'd really like to throw them in the basket and because they're like footballs or we want to
Hmm.
kick them around. But it's their choice.
Yeah.
And we need to give them much more choice because when they're older, they'll find it really difficult to make choices when they need to and when they're forced to. So, choice making is really empowering, and that's what we need children to feel empowered.
And if they are making choices, then they're planning and they're thinking and they're doing. And as they get older, they'll be able to problem solve more because we've given those early opportunities at problem solving because they're like, oh, well, like you say, presented with a bag of oranges, what am I going to do with that? Well, that's a problem for them. They've got to solve it. We're there to support them, but we're not there to do it for them.
Yeah. And I think the more that we do that, the more that we realize just how clever children are.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely incredible. I observed a setting today, and I thought, "Oh, this activity looks really hard and really tricky." It was story cubes, and children were looking at the pictures on the story cubes. I thought
Mm.
this is going to be a really hard adult-led session to observe and to take note on. But actually, I was really surprised at the level of imagination and creativity that was coming out from children.
Mm-hmm.
So all they had to do was roll the dice, try and interpret the tiny little picture that was on the top, and actually it was so rich and really did spark lots of imagination. And I was absolutely blown away by what they were saying and their imagination and their storytelling capabilities at 3 and 4. But
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't have found that out unless it was a challenging activity, unless there
Mm-hmm.
was some challenge involved with it. So, I learned something today, even if it does look like it's an activity for much older children. Let's see how it goes. And And these children absolutely blew me away. And I could see within 30 minutes of this activity that they had learned something within 30 minutes. And that's how powerful our role is. Not only of being a play partner, but also being a teacher and a mentor and a guide for children's learning, because children absolutely do need us, but they also need us to be respectful of where they're at, what they know and can do, and also be clever enough to anticipate what they just don't know yet, so that we can help them with that.
Brilliant. Well, Alison, I'm going to say a massive thank you for being a guest on the podcast. Your words are amazing and really resonate well with kind of where I'm at as a practitioner. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I love having professional discussions, and it's been great to chat to you today.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Don't forget, you can tune into more podcasts on our website. It's circletimepodcast.co.uk.